the single biggest determining factor as to whether or not you are going to achieve financial freedom, which financial freedom essentially means you don't need to worry about money, it's neutral, and you have the resources to do the things you want to do without thinking about it. The single determining factor is whether or not you are taking responsibility for your financial situation.
Welcome to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'm your host, Maritza Barone. In this show, I will introduce you to ideas, concepts, and mindsets that will open your mind to a new world of well-being and personal life growth. Through eye-opening interviews, we elevate people in the world doing amazing things for humanity and share insights that will shift you to become the happiest, healthiest, kindest, and most compassionate version of you. Hello and welcome to another episode of Things You Can't Unhear. Thank you for joining us again today. I have a very special episode for you on this show, as I'll be inviting you into the world of Conscious Conversations, which is a company I have recently co-founded with two other incredible minds. What Conscious Conversations mission is to create raw and honest connection to inspire a purpose-driven life and find ways to take ourselves off autopilot and become more conscious and more aware and more fulfilled with the main cornerstones of our lives. And we bring people together through deep connection to do this. Our most recent live event was held last week, and we were thrilled to open up a discussion about money. It is a taboo topic and a topic that people really tend to steer away from opening up in conversation. But it's actually healthy for us to talk about it, especially as women, to up-level our financial knowledge and our lingo and actually empower ourselves with financial independence and our awareness around it. We may have accumulated some limited beliefs over the course of our lives that have caused the way that we perceive money, and is ultimately now affecting our financial abundance without us even realizing it. So we decided to take the opportunity to share insights with a panel and open up this deeper discussion around money without any limiting fear or any limiting beliefs or any shame. So we hope you enjoy what is shared across this platform today. We certainly left with a fire in our belly and plenty of food for thought, not only for now, but long into the future. And it really opened our perception of how easily we can tap into some resources out there to gain control back and create that nest egg for our future selves. So we hope you enjoy this episode. We hope you find the information shared helpful. And if something hits home for you that you've got a story to share, please let us know. We'd love to hear all your stories. You can reach out at Conscious Conversations via our website or, of course, via the Things You Can't Unhear platform as well. So I will let the event speak for itself. I hope you enjoy. I'm excited to really jump into this topic tonight, and I think it's going to be a big eye-opener for us. And of course, as always, we have some incredible panelists to join us. Zoe Lamont, alongside her co-founders, is responsible for launching Verve Super, which is Australia's ethical superannuation fund run by women for women. She's driven by a passion for women's financial well-being and equality. And as a fellow of the School for Social Entrepreneurs in 2009, Zoe founded the 10,000 Girl campaign, and over the next 8 years ran financial wellbeing programs for over 10,000 women across metropolitan and rural and regional areas. Amazing, Zoe. And Sarah Reigelhuth, she's a serial entrepreneur and an investor in startups, having founded 8 companies since 2009. Tonight, she's joining us from Denver. She travels all around the world with her work. She's currently the CEO of Grow My Team, a global recruitment company, and the co-founder of the League of Extraordinary Women and author of Get Rich Slow. She holds board positions on several non-for-profit organisations and is recognised as the IFA Thought Leader of the Year, and was also named as one of Melbourne's top most influential, inspiring and creative citizens by The Age, and listed in the top 50 female entrepreneurs under 40 by shoestring. So we are in very good hands here today. I'm sure you'd all agree with that. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having us. Thank you for such a warm welcome.
Oh, no problem. Now, a bit of a disclaimer. What is said here tonight is conversational and should not be taken as direct personal finance advice, as everyone's situation is different. So if there's any personalised advice, we recommend you book to go and see a financial planner or advisor. All right, so I'm just gonna kick off, Sarah, with you. You're on my screen, so I'll go first with you. Now, I would like to really touch on our personal relationship with money and the beliefs that we have around it. Do you think there's some common limiting patterns and beliefs out there that we can really start to identify so that we can clear the pathway for more financial abundance? And what are some of the most common limiting beliefs that you've seen?
Yeah, absolutely. I think our relationship with money is something that we need to work on and consider and contemplate, just like our relationship with anything and everything else. It's also all interrelated. So any personal work, inner work that we do on money or on romantic relationships or on how we feel about ourselves is all going to have a flow-on effect. So, none of that inner work that we do is ever wasted. But and I think the first thing to do is to look at what our belief system is around money. So a simple exercise, for example, is to just sit with yourself, give yourself some space and time and just think about, like, what are the things that I believe to be true about money? Because whatever we believe is essentially our truth as an individual, but it's not necessarily truth. Like, nothing is really truth. The world, everything is just made up, essentially, especially money. It's a totally made up thing, right? So looking at what are our belief systems around money so that we can identify whether those beliefs are actually serving us or whether they might be holding us back. So common things we might hear or see, and I was a financial advisor for 17 years. I'm no longer in that space, but working a lot one-on-one with people, things that would come up would be, I'm sure we've all heard it, like money is the root of all evil, or just that concept that money is evil, money is bad, it's corrupt, it causes problems between people. If we hold a belief system like that, obviously our energy toward money is not positive, it's negative. We're probably repelling it in many ways because we're believing that it's evil. We could also find that we have a more scarce mindset around it, like, oh, I don't want to lose it, money's hard to keep, it's hard to earn, it's really difficult to manage. Like, any of these beliefs that might be more negative in nature are going to be energetically blocking that flow of money. So I think what we want to get to is a more healthy, neutral relationship with money where it can flow more freely to and from us, and it's not like a stress point in our life. So, looking as well at how much time we spend thinking about money, worrying about money, stressing about it is a really good indicator as to what your relationship is with money.
I think growing up, we definitely start to form an idea of money. Do you believe in our childhood, and Zoe, you can answer this too if you like, in our childhood, and we really form the foundations and the beliefs around money?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just quickly jump in on that and then you can add some stuff to it, Zoe. But that's one of the biggest things that frustrates me and challenges me is why we're really not taught about money in our education system. And that seems to be true all over the world. And almost everyone I know who works professionally in finance kind of like has this personal, like, I want to get money into schools. I've literally heard so many financial advisors and finance professionals with that passion, yet it doesn't happen. And that is, there's a really big question mark for me as to why it is not happening. And I have like a little bit of a conspiracy theory on it, that when we are not empowered with money, we are kept small. I don't know, just throwing that out there for some deeper thought and conversation. But, really all of our beliefs and relationship with money is formed from our home life and our parents, or maybe not all, but 90-something% of it, because there's no other financial education happening unless you're proactively going out and doing it. Or if you happen to maybe go to a school that has some curriculum, but for the most part, to my understanding, there's not a lot of it out there. What do you think, Zoe?
Oh, I totally agree with all of that, hence why we've both probably been doing what we've been doing for the last 15 years. Definitely I started 10,000 Girl because I had exactly the same experiences when I was young. Like, and I was fortunate to be in a family where, you know, we were in small business, and so I was around some sort of business and money conversations, but a lot of the talk, like specifically around shares and stuff, was really directed at my brother. And I was like, I'm actually more interested in this. Why do you only talk to him? And you know, now definitely, you know, Dad talks to me about that, but I think it's not even from our direct families. It's like this really historical piece that goes back even, you know, through generations. And so as each generation comes through, and I feel forever humbled and excited about that sort of grassroots hunger and appetite that young women especially, but women from all walks of life and all financial and life stages and are popping out of even if they have no peers thinking about it or none of their families thinking about it, people are actively seeking out, you know, to have money conversations and wanting and to be vulnerable and change. And this will then change naturally for the next generation. And so I feel like there's a real grassroots change in the whole belief structures. But I have to agree with you, Sarah, without getting all conspiracy, that's sort of why we've started Verve Super, because I think the financial services industry needs a real shake-up. And we need to question the whole system. What drives the system, who's really in control of the system, what are like the motives. You know, initially when money sort of, you know, was invented, it was just something to trade, and banks were a real service to the community, where it's really, you know, changed now, and it feels like society's working for the sort of financial industry rather than vice versa. And I think to start conversations about that, and as Sarah said, to percolate and contemplate that is important as a step to changing it and challenging it.
Yeah, well, hopefully we are on a you know, more evolved pathway now, and we're starting to see great signs moving forward. But if we wanted to broaden our support network around money knowledge and awareness, do you have some ideas on where we could look and maybe not look?
I mean, short of like listing off exact resources right now, I think we could probably provide some links to people afterwards and stuff like that. But I think a really good starting point is actually starting to talk about it with your friends or your network. So finding a little group of close friends and being like, do you want to actually talk about this and not have it as a taboo thing? Like, why is it taboo? I don't even know why it is. That's just another historical thing that we've just adopted. Like, oh, you know, you don't talk about money. It's impolite, or it's, you know, not proper or whatever. Like, BS, like just talk about it. Like, there's no rules. All the rules are made up. Let's start to question all of these things that we've just accepted as truth and change that. Because if you think about like any other area of your life, if you want to know more, improve, whatever, you would talk with people about it because you are interested and you are engaged, and you would want to hear different perspectives and opinions and experiences so that you could add that to your toolkit and grow, and you would want that support. So if you wanted to run a marathon, the chances are you would join a running group or find some friends that love to run. You might be looking at diets together that would support your energy needs. You might be, you know, supporting each other to turn up even when it's cold in the morning. You would be talking about if you got injured, like, how do I fix it? And you would all end up most likely getting to the finish line of that marathon. But we don't do that with our money. We hide in shame mostly. And I have discovered that through all of those years working with people. Like, there is so much shame around money. And I would invite everyone, like, if you do have some shame, if you do have feelings of like, I just don't know, I don't know how to manage this, I'm not sure, I feel out of my depth, or whatever it might be, like, feel a little bit angry maybe about the fact that you weren't taught it at school, and channel that anger. I mean, don't go overboard with your anger because it's not too healthy, but channel a little bit of that frustration and anger into actually learning about it, because, you know, we don't want to be victims, and we don't want to be in that kind of victim story, that archetype of orphan, like, poor me, I wasn't taught about money, but like, maybe just channel a little bit of that frustration into learning about it, into creating a group of women or friends or whatever who are willing to be open, be like, this is my situation. This is what happened to me this week. The only way that we start to shift things is to start to reflect, contemplate, look at them, and look at the ways that we are interacting with money, question it, and then start to, over time, improve our relationship.
I think finding the right people too, because people can definitely get very weird about it if people are in different financial positions, I think. And I think that's where the weirdness comes in my perspective. It's, you know, perhaps this person can invest because they've got some savings, where this person is deeply in debt. So I think that's where the imbalance and the sort of restriction comes up between people. And I found that in the conversations that I've had.
Yes, I think it's true. However, we need to reframe what those things mean. Like, if we, five of us sitting on the top of the screen, decided to use a marathon example, I'm sure we are all coming from a very different running base right now. Like, I have not been running for 5 years. I don't know if anybody else does run. Maybe you do. Maybe you run every single day. Should I be ashamed of myself that I don't run? Should I not join this running group of people because I don't? And you have to find the right people who want to actually do something, but try to hold space together, that there's no shame in where you're at. There's no starting point that's better or worse than another starting point, but there is so much shame around money, and that is what's holding so many people back from actually taking those first steps. Is like, I should be different to where I am now. I should be in a better position. I'll talk to somebody about it once I get fit, so to speak. Like, oh, wait, I'm going to go run for a month by myself before I work with you girls on my running. That's like, probably I'll just lose track and not end up, then you guys will be four weeks ahead of me in your training schedule, and now I'll have even more shame about joining. So
true.
I always say to my girlfriends, on a really practical level, I'm like, come on, we've got to all do this. Don't we want to go on, like, you know, fabulous adventures together? And you don't want, and think of that inside you as well, because it has this huge ripple effect in your community, like not only your sort of family, but your community and the like local and global economy. Like, the more financially empowered we all are, the freer the world. Like, the more financially free you are, the more you can just follow your heart and make like decisions that are good for the world and stuff. And so I think that thinking helps get sort of skim over the shame or the, oh, but having lots of money is greedy, or whatever it might be, like, or why should I have that when other people don't, whatever, like all these different things that that people have. And I think that really thinking like, yeah, let's all do it together, and let's all make sure that everyone good in the world, and that's like something that we tell the Verve members and stuff. We're like, come on, you're doing fabulous things in all different parts of your life. Put the money in your pockets, because you're going to make really great financial decisions for the world, you know? Yeah. And I think that especially like everyone in this forum and in the, you know, you've chosen to have this money conversation tonight. You've chosen to be in a group that's about having conscious conversations. And so the more money in all these people's pockets is way better than the greedy bankers.
Yeah, you're right. And we can create an impact when we've got that abundance of money as well, and flow that and pay it forward. So we need to look at it in that perspective. So friendship groups, yes, that's one support network. Externally to that, can you advise us on where else we can look for some sort of solid advice or support around financial awareness?
I think online now, it's so great, because there's so many, even, you know, Facebook groups and stuff you can join if you don't feel super comfortable with your peers, but you can find these like-minded, and if you don't like the chat or it doesn't feel right going on, leave that one, find another one, because there's plenty of conversations happening now. You just need to find the one that you're comfy with, and the one that inspires you and keeps you accountable and motivated and knowledgeable, and, you know, gives you the resources that you feel like, yes, that's my next step. Or hear from the stories from people that are a year, 5 years ahead of you going, yes, that's where I want to be. How did you do that? And, you know, all you need is then one person, and then between you both, you find another person. And it doesn't have to be physical anymore, as, you know, obviously proven in this conversation.
Exactly. Look, I think seeing a financial advisor, you would obviously both recommend as well. Do you think that is a great starting point when it comes to sort of building awareness?
I think it's a starting point. I think like a multi-pronged approach is probably a good idea. So reading books, you know, there's a lot of great books. Like I've written my book, Get Rich Slow, but there's a lot of books out there that are just designed to help you learn about your own relationship with money and basic kind of financial education, which I'll throw out there as well. Like it actually is not complicated. So there's a whole industry that's made to make it look complicated, but it's really not as complicated as it sounds. What's far more complicated is our relationship with money. The actual managing of money is not really that complicated once you get it, and you keep it pretty simple. And, you know, I'm someone who has amassed some wealth over time, and it's not like more complicated now either. It's like I do the same things with my money pretty much that I did when I was first starting out. Like I have some cash, I have some shares, and I have some property. Like that's pretty much like, and then I just chip away, have my superannuation, which is invested in those kinds of things as well. And I just still put money into those things every single month. Like it's pretty simple. So I would say talking with friends, forming that group, maybe the groups online, as Zoe was talking about, reading some books. There's a really great book called The Energy of Money, actually, that I would strongly recommend. That's more about your relationship with money, and then maybe look at some of the financial education ones. And then seeing a financial advisor at the same time, and maybe visit like a few of them. Also, all the super funds like Verve Super, you guys would have so many tools on the website, I'm sure, and most of them do. Like just poking around online at where your money currently is, and just getting familiar with what your money is currently doing, even your bank, whatever money or investments you do have, take a look at it and start learning and see what resources they have, just to familiarize yourself.
Yeah, well, Verve has like a free 6-step money program. There are so many free money programs and downloads and ebooks and worksheets, and, you know, and I think that people need to demand more from their banks and super funds and financial planners and accountants. And a lot of the time people will go and, you know, think they need to see a financial planner and they sort of feel like maybe they're outsourcing, you know, and there's a real transfer of responsibility when that happens. Not everyone, but I've seen it happen a lot. And I think that you've got to keep sort of the ball in your court, and you've got to really demand any sort of the advisory network, whether it's on any facet. Even, you know, when you think about health and stuff, you've got to keep asking questions. And if you're not getting the service, keep asking for it. Or, as Sarah said, shop around until you find people that are adding huge value to your life and that are proactively following you up at different points in your journey and different times in the year, and making sure, you know, you're getting, and even with the banks and the super funds, like you're paying, especially with super, you're paying fees. And so they should be providing you with some education and, you know, even at Verve, we've got free access to a financial planner, a divorce and separation coach, a career coach, a pay negotiation coach. Like if your super fund or banks and stuff aren't giving that, ask for it.
Yeah.
Because they're only going to change when we as consumers like demand more.
It's funny. Today, I had a call from my bank because I had clicked on the free financial advice button that was on my app, and they gave me a call today to schedule an appointment and told me the appointment was going to cost $1,500. And I was like, you said it was free. So, there's these little loopholes that get through. So it's asking and constantly pushing, like you're saying. I think that's a really great tip, and finding your money buddies. I really love that, and I think that's a really amazing tip to follow as well. So moving on from that, I want to talk about the pandemic that we're all facing, because it's the elephant in the room, and it's obviously affected all of our financial situations, whether it's in a positive or a negative way. But Zoe, I'll start with you on this because of the super side of things. Whether we are on JobKeeper or JobSeeker, or we're dipping into our super, which is an option at the moment that has been offered to us. What is your take on that in the long term?
Yeah, so everyone's situation is different. I think even before answering that specific question, we need to step back. And so many people that we've been speaking to lately have really realised that when that sort of financial hardship hits, and this can be, I've had so many conversations over time with, women leaving financially abusive relationships and all kinds of things. So whether it's, coronavirus, or whether it's, something else in your life, I think it heightens where you're financially at. And I think that if we can take anything away from this really turbulent time that's very financially challenging for many people, is that we need to go right back to basics. And that's really what we've been talking with a lot of our members at the moment, and go back to the basics and make sure every time some income's coming in, we are building, first of all, a safety buffer. So in the future, even if you have had to pull out your super, or, do things that you wouldn't ordinarily choose to do, that in the future you won't have to do that again. And so I think like an emergency buffer, or a safety buffer, rainy day fund, whatever you want to call it, is critically important for every individual and household. And then once that's together, then putting your money into, those sort of more medium to long-term buckets, and making sure, again, every time income coming in, it's trickling into like that medium and longer term bucket. So you're looking after future you. And I think that if you can take those lessons, then okay, and I'm happy to share a few resources that we've created, including like there's about 10 things you can do before you pull out your super. But in some people's situations, like let's say, for example, if you're, in the early stages of starting a photography business, and you're not eligible for, if you've only been going for a few months, you're not eligible for some government subsidies, and you've, spent your savings buffer setting up your business and buying your equipment and stuff. Literally, you need to have food on the table and to be able to pay your rent. And if taking out your super is, your only financial choice, well then, then it's a blessing if you have that. But if you have other choices, it's much better to be able to, utilize some government subsidies, or switch around any of your current resources in order to keep your long-term savings like in super, because over the long term compounded, it's far more than taking $10,000, off the table now.
Okay, so the first thing that I want to throw out there is like, what you believe is your reality. So if you believe this pandemic is terrible financially and we're all suffering and it's a struggle, then that's probably what's going to happen to you. And just be really mindful of those thoughts. What we believe, we tend to validate. We look for data points to validate our situation. So if you think about like, you might be having a bad day, feeling a bit like sorry for yourself, and you go out and then, you buy your coffee and you drop it and you spill it. And you're like, yeah, see, I'm just a loser. We've all had those days where like whatever happens, we use that to validate the feeling that we're having or the belief that we're having that day, even though on another day when you think you're absolutely crushing it, you drop your coffee and you laugh and buy another one. So just be mindful of your belief system, and especially I mean, everyone on this call is, I would imagine, a little maybe less plugged into the news cycle and maybe the collective fear, and maybe like already questioning and thinking about things. But obviously, if we plug into the news and all of that, we start to experience this kind of story that they're feeding us, that this is such a terrible, challenging time or whatever. So just come back to like your own story and what is it for you. And if you are struggling with money right now, that's okay as well. And maybe this pandemic is highlighting something that you've needed to look at and face for a while. If you have a good relationship with money and you feel, or a neutral relationship, let's call it, there is no good or bad. If you feel like you've worked on it, and you've got a pretty good handle on it, like it really wouldn't be impacting you that much right now. So I think it's a great yardstick for where you're at with your relationship with money. When it comes to your question about, whether people should or shouldn't be taking their money out of super, like as Zoe said, it's a very individual situation. In an ideal world, no, because that's your longer term retirement savings. And if you're in a position right now where that is the resort to, there's no other money but to pull from your long-term savings, I mean, that's the reality. Like that is your situation. So go ahead and do what you need to do, I suppose. But it would be really important to question, like, wow, why am I in a position where my only option is to pull money out of, my future life, what I'm creating, my nest egg. And that's okay as well. There's no shame in that. It's just a really fantastic opportunity to be like, all right, I don't want to be in this position again, having to draw from that bucket. So I'm going to, as we've been talking about, I'm going to bring more awareness to my financial situation. I'm going to work on my relationship with money, and I'm going to actually get it under control. The other thing to consider is like, how can you just make some more money right now? And it's always possible. There's always a way. Like, what simple thing, like what have you got in your house that you don't need anymore, that you could sell on, I don't know, eBay or whatever it is that people sell things on now. But like there is always ways to make money and to call it in. So even considering that right now, and sometimes when we have our back against the wall, so to speak, can be when we really see what we're made of, like what magic exists inside of us. And it would be good to question that before going into the super fund and just being like, oh, well, I've got no other option. Like, are you sure? Is that true? Do you really have zero other option? Because there are infinite possibilities always. And oftentimes when we get into a sticky point where we feel like we have to make a tough decision, we start thinking we have only two options, black or white, there's two ways I can go, but never. There's always just like infinite possibilities of what we could do.
Yeah. So leaving that as the last resort.
Yeah, especially when emotions are high and like your judgment might be a bit clouded when you're, financially stressed, and I agree, you just can see in a really channeled way. But even in our food business, we had so many jobs going so quickly, and it was incredible who was applying for them and who was happier, taking JobKeeper or those really, oh my gosh, we had some great people applying that were quite highly skilled, but they just wanted to feed their family, and they were happy to do anything as a temporary, measure. And I think that's, as you say, Sarah, when that magic grit comes out in people, and when you say, you know what, I got through that, so I can get through the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
Yeah. Well, I want to grab those resources off you perhaps later, Zoe, where we can check that list to make sure we've covered everything before we dig into our super. I'd love to share that with everyone listening tonight. But a couple of people have asked this on the chat, and it was actually a question that I had lined up as well. For people who are in a difficult situation right now, want to look at a budgeting tool or some action around being strategic about the money that they do have, what is some advice that you could give us there to really find some processes around that?
One thing that I do for myself, it's very practical, is I have a standing meeting on the first of every month. It's 2 hours, and that's my time to spend. It's actually 60 minutes because I spend the other 60 minutes on my business finances, but it's 60 minutes of my personal finances. And that's once a month. I sit down, I have a really simple Google sheet, like a spreadsheet where I just have all my assets listed on the left, every bank account, everything I own, and I just update the values. And it's very manual, but it's intentionally manual so that I actually like sit and think about every single thing. And then I reflect. It's got every single month going back years, and I can reflect on my overall financial position, where it's at. And I use that time as well to just think if I want to do anything differently. If I use it to pay any bills that I have to pay. I live in America now, like you cannot pay things sometimes online, which is really annoying. So I actually have to like manually go and pay things. But I use that 1 hour of the month to like do anything related to finance. And the way that I have all of my money and everything like automated and set up, I shouldn't have to think about it until that 1 hour a month. And if there's anything that comes through during the month that I need to make a decision on, I'll just like snooze that email to pop in that day, and that'll just hit my list. So ideally, I don't have to really do anything particular with my money during the rest of the month. So that's like a really practical step as well to get, and you might want to start with once a week if you're just getting on top of things, but to just put some structure around like when I'm going to think about it and when I'm not. And when you can get to a point where 60 minutes a month is all you really need, like that's just, it's a great situation to be in. Like that is all it takes to manage all of my wealth and for me to think about my money. I will say that I do still work on my relationship with money sometimes, like when I'm journaling in the morning, or it may become a focal point at some time in my year, because our relationship is always shifting. You know, sometimes when we could have a windfall and actually get a lot more money in from some reason, like that can like throw our relationship, like, oh, what's coming up for me now? So it's always, or somebody could ask you for a loan and you're like, oh, what comes up in me? So, you know, I think there's some of that work that can be done outside of it, but especially with the management of money, that once a month thing. Somebody mentioned an app, which sounds great. A little other tool that I like to do, or exercise, I should say, that I like to do with my money is spending either a day or a week where every time you spend money, you just make a note of it and you just think about the value transaction that you just had. So just to bring awareness, and literally doing it for one day, you can start to see any patterns or habits that you might have where you might be spending money that you don't value what you're getting in return, or you might just notice like how hard it is for you. Like every time you spend money, you're like, oh, and like you don't want to live like that either. So just like identifying those patterns and habits and bringing awareness to where you're spending money. And then, yeah, there's a ton of like actual apps and tools that you can use to track these things as well.
It's so funny, that awareness about that energy of when you're spending too. Sometimes you spend and you feel great about it. You're so pleased with the fact that you've purchased something that you really love, and other times, as you said, you're handing over the money and it's just like, I don't want to, I feel guilty giving this away. And I think that is so important, that awareness around that, because if we're feeling grateful for the opportunity and the ability to spend that money, then more will flow into our lives. I think that's my belief.
And maybe making observation. I know another thing that can happen for people is like, when something else is going on for you emotionally that's challenging, it's like go spend some money on something to just like fill that void or that discomfort that's coming up that's got nothing to do with money, like looking for that as well. Like there's so many different like habits and patterns that we can each have, that just bringing awareness to them is the first step to shifting them.
There's possibly some people here tonight who are in quite tricky situations and have existing debts or loans or investments that have gone sour over time and in a real pickle right now. Do you have some plans to help us manage that situation? Either of you, I don't know who wants to go first here, but yeah, some advice for someone who's sort of gotten a little bit in over their head right now, and the best next steps in which they can take to move forward.
I think it's actually an extension of what you've both mentioned around awareness. I find so many people, and it's hard. We all know it's hard, that when you get in a spot in your life, whether it be in whatever facet, health, relationships, money, whatever, you don't really want to dig around it because it's not comfortable, and it's easier to sort of push it under the rug. But I think that what you've both said around awareness is the absolute key to becoming just really comfortable with your money and more conscious in what's coming in and what's going out. And so I think there's a couple of things that practical things, I suppose, that I've helped a lot of people through, when you've got in a bit of a pickle, whether it's debt or whatever. And I think it comes back to literally just getting a blank piece of paper and writing down where you're at. So it could be, your assets, like all the things you own, and your liabilities, all the things you owe. And then you can break the things you owe or your debts or liabilities into sort of 3 categories. So whether you call them the good, bad and ugly, or now debt and soon debt and later debt, or whatever it might be, the highest priority debts are going to be your highest interest unsecured. So there's nothing that you can go and sell to quickly get rid of it, and so writing them down in the list with what interest rates you're paying, and then thinking about those sort of not super high priority debts, but higher priority than your investment debt, like your home or a car, things that have something behind it, but they're not, I suppose, tax effective debt, and usually lower interest rate than your credit cards and personal loans and store cards and those sort of things. And then you've got in the 3rd section your investment debt. So that might be mortgage to an investment property, or it might be margin loan to shares or business debt. So that is the interest and costs associated with that is tax deductible because you're earning income or you're generating income from that debt. So that you should really put everything on minimum repayments. And this is mathematical, and then you get into the headspace part. But mathematically, to put everything on minimum repayments and put every penny you can into the highest interest rate debt first. And mathematically, that'll help you sort of get on top of it. But then if there is one thing that's really niggling you more than the other, get rid of that first, or a small one to get a quicker win or something, because so much of this is mental, and really we need to have peace of mind with our money. That is our ultimate goal. And so whatever you need to do, you'll know what's right and what feels good when you start doing it. But you cannot take any financial steps without awareness and without knowing, well, where am I? And also, where do I want to be? I know when it's hard, it's really hard when you're in a bit of a financial pickle to even think about the future. But I always say to people, really spend some time. What if you didn't have all this debt? What would it feel like? What would you be doing with the money that's coming in that's going to interest? And sometimes it takes a while to get your head around that, but it's an incredible aha moment when people can think, whoa, I could be saving for a house, or I could say yes to invitations, or I could, wherever people are in their life. And to really hold on to that feeling, you're going to be able to create really cleverly and feel much more motivated to sort of get rid of the rubble that will clear space for the more creative, and more freeing money decisions that you can make down the track. And just one more thing, I think using your bank accounts is a really good way, especially if you feel like your willpower goes out the window sometimes, and having there's lots of different ways to do it, but I find it really useful to put all your income into one account, and then you pay yourself to keep roof over your head and food on the table and some light entertainment. If you only have a set amount each week or each fortnight or each month, and you have an FPOS card for that only, it's incredible how you spend within what is in there. It's like when people keep getting pay rises, and they just, if you don't consciously make a decision what to do with it, you just you just spend it. It just keeps, you just change your lifestyle. And so if you use your accounts, and so from your income account, yep, you pay yourself to live, and then you pay your future self, maybe your 5-year future self or your 10-year future self, and then you pay your retired future self, put a bit more money into super. Then all of a sudden, you've got this system that, as Sarah said, you only need to look at now and again, because you know that actually it's working for you. And you can't muck it up too much, because you only have access to money what's in the accounts. Incredible how you end up spending what you put in that account.
I can vouch for that. I definitely have done that in the past, and it has definitely worked for me. And I think that's a great idea and tool, as along with your visual snapshot. I think both of you said that visual snapshot, working it all out, having it all there in front of you, is a really good way to move forward and be aware of what's actually going on with your finances. When it comes to saving, we touched on this a little bit, but what are some good ideas on really helping us to save? So do you, for example, choose something to save for to help you get there quicker, rather than just going, okay, that's my saving fund, I have no idea what I'm saving for? Like if we're choosing something to save for example, we have a course we want to do or a holiday we want to go on, do you think that adds added motivation for us to get there? Or do we need to think about how much we actually need to feel like we've been successful financially? I mean, what are some ideas around savings that can help us really get the foundation strong?
Yeah, I think absolutely knowing why you're building wealth. What are you saving for? What lifestyle do you want to create? Exactly what Zoe was talking about, like starting to visualize your future self and what you want to create. Just like any other area of our lives, like we achieve the most, it seems, when we actually have an intrinsic desire, passion, alignment with achieving something or moving towards something. So thinking about the lifestyle you want to create, if you want to, one of my highest priority in life from a lifestyle perspective is travel and freedom to move around. So I've built my business in that way. I'm fully remote so that I can travel a lot. And that's my number one budget line item, is to have X amount of dollars every year that I can just travel, so that I don't have to feel guilty or have any of those feelings come up when I'm booking flights and making decisions to go on trips. And then when it comes to the longer term stuff, I think, starting with some milestone goals is really good if you do not have any form of savings habit or anything, because it's sort of proving to yourself and giving you the evidence that you can do this. So even saving for something that's just 6 months away or a year away, but ultimately, in my experience, I came to a point where now it's just this one big number that is financial freedom for me. So for me, that's $3 million in invested assets outside of property that I would live in. So the $3 million I know would provide me somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000 of income. And I don't include my businesses in that either. But if and when I have $3 million in invested wealth, so cash and shares and maybe property, that is producing me an income where I no longer have to work. And I know that because I know my income needs are around $100,000 to $150,000 a year. That will be, I don't live a super lavish lifestyle, but I definitely want that amount of money roughly to be able to do those things that I like, the travel and all of that. So I've spent time figuring that piece out. I mean, in my life, there's actually going to be far more wealth than that, I know, because I'm just a very abundant person and I know what I'm going to be doing with my money and what I do. And I already had money flow in above and beyond, and it's been higher and it's been lower and all sorts of things, but that's my kind of baseline nest egg, if that makes sense. And, I'm going to talk about those numbers really openly with you, and whatever is coming up for you when I say it, make a note. If you're looking at me thinking, fuck you with your $3 million, that seems so far away, think about that, write it down, because I didn't come from wealth. I didn't start from anything, and I've built this up myself. I've been in debt. I know what it's like to lie awake every single night thinking, holy shit, I don't know how to get out of this. Sorry for swearing, by the way. I don't know if that's okay or not. you know, or if you're thinking that's inspirational, or if you're thinking that's not enough, I want way more than that, like whatever you're thinking, it's completely fine. But run your own race, because that is my race. Like that is the path that I'm on, that I've spent time figuring out for me. And I think that's the key, is like financial success. You're the only person who can say whether you are financially successful or not. And you cannot say whether someone else is financially successful or not unless they've told you, these are my goals and I've achieved them. That's the only way you know if somebody else is financially successful. So, you know, we always like this term success, and it can apply to any area of our life, and like measuring ourselves against other people. Like check yourself if you know the real story, and don't be measuring yourself off something that you think looks good if you don't actually know what it means for you. So yeah, and I just want to throw one other thing out there while we're talking about mindset a little bit, is like the single biggest determining factor as to whether or not you are going to achieve financial freedom, which financial freedom essentially means you don't need to worry about money, it's neutral, and you have the resources to do the things you want to do without thinking about it. The single determining factor is whether or not you are taking responsibility for your financial situation. If you own it, if you own where you're at and you're like, that was a shitty thing I did, oh well, I'm going to do better next time. You know, that attitude of just like owning it, or that was a great thing I did, I'm so proud I set that up all those years ago. But owning everything that's happened to you, every decision you've made, the financial position you're in right now, owning that you got yourself there, for better or worse, is the single determining factor as to whether or not you are going to achieve financial freedom. The longer you stay in a victim mindset of feeling like it's happened to me, I'm in the washing machine, like, oh my God, poor me, how did I get here, da 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 da. The whole time I was in that mindset, I never got anywhere. As soon as I shifted my mindset to like, okay, let's be frank, Sarah, you got yourself into this mess, you got to get yourself out of it. That is the thing that is going to change your life.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so powerful, and there's so many woohoos in the group. I think in the chat there, really celebrating the fact that you were open enough to share those numbers with us, because it definitely doesn't happen enough, and it's powerful. We're really grateful for you doing that. Thank you.
Oh, I just love so much that that this is it's crazy that we don't talk about it like so openly as a society, but it's actually the funnest part. And if you spend 95% of the time like imagining the future, and like whether it's drawing pictures or writing words or sticking things on the wall or talking to friends, or however you get clarity on different ideas and stuff. I love a couple of things Sarah said, that like the first of all, if you have lost some confidence over the way with, oh, goals never work for me, or planning, you know, but it's just always comes undone, or, you know, whatever. Start small. And so you achieve something. And I always talk about these confidence blocks. And so if you, and then slowly we're building up our confidence blocks until we build this really powerful platform where literally we can start thinking about things and they, you know, and they happen. Even when Sarah was talking, I was actually reflecting, yeah, shit, I did a really amazing thing yesterday that I have been dreaming about for like 10 years. And literally I was thinking that I remember sleeping in my car more than once in like the first business that not the first, probably like the second business that I was starting. That was in 2000 it makes my heart beat, 2006 or something. And to do sales meetings and stuff. So I didn't have to fork out, you know, a motel room or whatever. And like, so this is coming from that, 13 years ago. So not very long ago. And then yesterday I wrote an email to an architect saying, you know, this is a budget for this, you know, off the grid sustainable house on this eco farm that I want to build, because I never wanted any personal debt. And so I've saved up the money just to say, right, I've got $800,000, build me this thing, you know? And it's such a cool feeling when you realize that, whoa, that was a pipe dream for a long time and I've done it. And I think that that keep keep those dreams alive, you know, those ideas of, I want to build a house one day with, you know, not taking on any debt, or I want to start I spoke to an amazing girl the other day, and she's like, I want to build this dome in the middle of Australia for, you know, special education for Indigenous people. And I was like, and where she was now and saying that dream alive feels like a long way. Like, she had personal credit card debt that she was still battling with, but I know the way she said it that she's going to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so if 95% of your efforts are spent in dreamland, and then, you know, reminding yourself that of all the time, and finding people around you that believe in it as much as you do, anything is possible in such short amounts of time.
So inspiring, Zoe. And like, if you're reading the comments here, everyone's congratulating you. You know, you're achieving your dream. You've done it. So it's incredible. And it puts definitely a fire in my belly, listening to you and hearing that story and what you've come from and how you've turned that around. It's really incredible. Congratulations from all of us to you, and well done. I want to talk about investing, so we can share that feeling that you have and that journey that you've gone through, and that celebration that you're enjoying now, and that hard work that you've worked on. Let's talk about investing, whether we've got some small amount or a large amount sitting in our bank account, or just projecting as to what may be coming. How can we start to look at investment options, and perhaps start small? What are the best ways to dip our toe in?
I use that app Raise. It used to be called Acorns, and you can attach it to your bank account, and every time you spend any money, it rounds it up and puts it into, like, you can choose your investments, and they have like an ethical investment portfolio. But I've found it's a great, that's not what I use for the bulk of my wealth. Like, the bulk of my wealth is managed by a financial advisor in some insurance bonds we use, and then within that we use ETFs and index funds and things which track the market. But the question was, how do you start small? And there are apps, Raise is one of them, there's probably many others out there, where you literally can start investing just cents in the stock market. And I think it's a really great starting point for people just to start to watch what the market does and start to get comfortable with this movement. You know, because if we've only ever had experience with cash, we put $10 in the bank and it's still $10 every single day. And then one day it gets like a little tiny few cents of interest, and that's the only thing that happens. But when we invest in the stock market, it goes up and down all day, every day. And you can watch that and see how that tracks and see how that feels. So, you know, when we have $10 in the stock market, it doesn't really like impact us that much. If it goes to $9.50, like, we'll cope. But when you have, you know, $100,000 and it goes to 95,000 in an afternoon, it can feel like, oh wow, I just lost $5,000. But we didn't lose it unless we actually cash out that money and what do you call it? Solidify the loss. What's the word, Zoe? When you like make that loss reality is when you cash your money out. If you stay in, the market will continue to go up. So I like those apps that allow you to put in just like cents, and then you can add $10 a week or $100 a week or whatever you might be comfortable, and build that over time. And then once you've built that up, you could go into a start working with a financial advisor or whatever it might be. Look at your superannuation as well and actually choose the investments that are in there. That's another place. You're already all invested in the market, I would imagine, unless you've purposely put your superannuation in cash or in something else. You're already invested in shares. So even as a starting point, go look at what your super's been doing. Look at it every day for a week, just to start to feel those feelings of like, oh yeah, the market like goes up and down. But during this pandemic period, like my monthly check-ins with myself, my net wealth has dropped, absolutely, because the market's dropped. So, you know, I had 1 month, from 1 month to the next, where my net wealth went down. Like, it's okay though, because I'm investing like for the long term. I'm not pulling anything out right now. But I think that's one of the big things, is starting small. Thankfully we can. You know, 10, 20 years ago, we could not invest 50 cents in the stock market. There was no possibility to do that. So investing was far more out of reach for getting started small, whereas now all these apps allow us to start with just nothing, barely anything, which is so amazing.
Great tips. I think we've popped that into the chat. Zoe, can you tell us about ETFs in more detail?
Yeah, so I think just quickly, one of the cool things that Sarah said about Raise and your super and stuff is that whole concept of then you tell yourself, I am an investor. Mm-hmm. I invest in shares. And once you sort of build up that, oh, yeah, I am an investor.
Confident.
What else could I invest in? And I think that ETFs, or exchange traded funds, or sometimes you hear about them like index funds, or are a really sort of fast growing and increasingly popular way to get diversification. So have, not all your eggs in one basket at a reasonable cost when you're first starting out investing in shares. So just sort of, I suppose, demystify we're doing actually a series of videos on WTF, our ETFs at the moment. So if you want to go to our Women with Verve Facebook group, you'll be able to access a few of these short videos that go into more detail than what we can probably go into now. But essentially, sort of ordinary ETFs track an index. So think of an index like a theme or a trend, and it might be something like the ASX 200, so the top 200 companies on the Australian Stock Exchange, or it might be something like global robotics, or healthcare, and so you can choose any of these indexes or themes, and they might be across different industries, across different commodities, across different countries. And chime in, Sarah, if you've got a better way of explaining it. But these are sort of type of managed fund that tracks an index. So you're never going to beat the market, because essentially you are investing in, that theme of the market. But you're also never going to go lower than the market, because you're the market. And more often than not, and the data is quite convincing, that the actively managed funds, so the funds that have a panel of fund managers making the decisions in that managed fund for you, they, sometimes beat the market and sometimes don't. And even people like the Warren Buffetts of the world and stuff are really pro index funds and or ETFs. And so if you want to, the ASX have some free courses on ETFs. Also, as I said, like at Verve, we've got heaps of blogs and videos, because lots of our members are starting to invest in shares, and we talk about ETFs a lot. And it's a really great way of, even with, $1,000, you can set up an online, share trading account, and literally start, you might then have access to 200 companies across 20 countries and 6 industries with $1,000. So that helps because, as some industries, as has Corona times have highlighted, when some industries are going really strong, say across health and stuff, other industries like airlines and stuff and travel are experiencing a big dip. And so when you have your money spread across all different countries and all different industries, and then you are much less likely of feeling the high highs and the low lows. You can sort of ride out the average a little bit. And that's what's good about going into these quite low cost diversified managed funds. And why they're low cost is because they are run more by an algorithm, I suppose, because they're just tracking an index rather than paying, the big wigs to make your investment decisions for you. So it's not rocket science, or why are they cheap, or, it makes sense. And it's not it's not hard to understand these indexes once you've have a look at some of the big ETF providers are like Better Shares, iShares, Vanguard. They're some of the biggest providers in Australia. So even exploring some of their websites, you can get a sense of how ETFs work and how indexes work. And then you either, the broader you can start, the better, like how to choose, where to even start, because there's hundreds of these. So you think about, first you want the most diversification to start off, but then also think, well, I have insights or interest in this industry because I work in it, or and so use your common sense. Even as a consumer, we might go in and we choose different products, or we're noticing different trends in the supermarket, or use that your everyday experiences, especially as I'm sure this group, there's a lot of intuitive sort of, conscious, decision makers in this community, I'm sure. Use that, tap into that. And it's incredible, and they're very inspiring, some of the research that's coming out about how great investors women make because of this. We're not just in it to get some quick wins, or, we're quite focused in general on the long term and our why of what we want it for, how much we want, when do we want to access the money. And knowing that then really helps you to make much more informed decisions around what types of investments are good to suit each time horizon and even your risk profile.
Absolutely. Such great advice there. I learned a lot about the ETFs on the Verve Instagram page when I watched your video. So I'm intrigued to sort of dig deeper into that. From your perspective, ladies, is there anything that you want to share that might be really powerful for us to know that we haven't touched on?
I think that there is something incredibly exciting happening in the world at the moment, and really us creating Verve, we feel like it's not even our baby. This is just a reflection of what's happening in the world. And with ethical investing and or values investing or responsible investing or sustainable investing, whatever you want to call it, it's super exciting that we can actually think of our investments not only as a way to build wealth, to travel and, to do the type of things we want to do in our lives, but to literally change the world. So we can choose whether it's inside our super as a start, or, in all your investing decisions going forward, to say, you know what? I don't want to invest. When you invest, you help a company grow, right? So what kinds of companies and industries do you want to see grow, and what do you not? And really consciously going through even your portfolio and your super and stuff and saying, you know what? This is awesome. This excites me. And this makes me feel sick that I've got money and, this and this. And it happens to all of us, like it takes some conscious thinking about, well, what is important to me and where is my money, even who do I bank with, etc. And I think that can give a real, I suppose, be a motivator as well to get a bit more interested in your money and to build your wealth and to get a bit more interested in investing. And it makes it a bit more interesting when you're actually thinking, whoa, what's the impact and you might think that you're, $5,000 or 100 grand or whatever it might be small in the grand scheme of things. But collectively, and there is a huge collective shift, like that ethical investing space is growing like crazy. Collectively, we can move, trillions of dollars into industries that we want to see grow and prosper in the future. And I think that it's the only way we're going to change the world, because the powers to be at the moment are largely like, in that sort of capitalist race. And so we need to vote with our money and use our money to shift the world. And I think if you're not feeling so financially engaged, which is really easy to be because it's not intuitive and it can feel like it's a foreign language and stuff, think of it like, this is the world I live in and the world that my kids live in, and what can I do with my money that can not only build wealth for me but change the world. And I think it's a really fun thing to think about.
What about ethical banks? I mean, you've mentioned ethical investing. Have you got an idea on which banks we should keep our money in when it comes to ethical banking?
Well, while I can't sort of, list off the small handful that are really your options, so many of our super members have also, at the same time they were shifting their super, were shifting their banks.
Yeah.
And there are a few banks in Australia that are doing some really great things. So just do your research and ask around. I don't know, Sarah might be able to name a few more.
Well, I'm like, text me and I'll tell them, Zoe. No, that wouldn't work though. I don't actually. I mean, I've been living in the US for 5 years, so I'd have to say I'm not super in touch with
that's all right.
That side of things, but
we can do our research. That's okay.
Yeah.
There's a great question here that I think you can answer, Sarah. Have you got any tips on aligning with your partner on money?
Yeah, definitely. And I do want to say one point as well. If for anyone like hearing the language that we're talking about, like ETFs and index funds, and it feels a bit overwhelming, like I just want to come back to that initial point that we made right at the start of this, as like, don't feel bad or don't feel overwhelmed, or don't judge yourself for feeling overwhelmed, I should say, because just remember, you were not taught about this stuff. And even I, 17 years in finance, have a finance degree. Like there's so much stuff I don't know. I don't know what it means. And I just want to normalize that, and also talk to the point that you don't have to know everything. You don't need to go get a finance degree to be able to do this stuff. Like Zoe mentioned, a bunch of like looking online, and you can educate yourself, but don't get overwhelmed in that education process that you need to know everything. Okay, and one other thing on shame, because somebody asked right at the start, like, why is there so much shame? Mm-hmm. Shame lives in the shadows. So just remember that. Whatever we hold as secrets, whatever we hold close to us that we don't bring to the light, is where shame thrives and grows. So that is why there's so much shame around money, purely because we don't have a culture where we talk about it. So just throwing that out there. Yeah. Partners, getting aligned with your partner on money. So it is a really big thing that couples struggle with, or can, some couples do struggle with. And it makes sense because we all have all of these beliefs and these past experiences, and we all have a unique relationship with money. So of course, bringing two people together and trying to, share, if those beliefs and experiences and relationship with money are not aligned, they're on like different ends of a spectrum or whatever, it's going to cause conflict. Just like our views on anything in relationship can, if they're opposing, can be a point of contention. So the most important thing is to be doing your own work on your relationship with money. And we can't always force our partners to do that work. So there's that. Hopefully you have a partner who's engaged in the process and would also like to do work on their relationship with money and open up that conversation to be able to talk about it. And just like anything in life, it's around understanding that there's no right or wrong. Like there's just different experiences, different beliefs, different perspectives. So the more that we can question our beliefs, and I really try to live a life where I don't believe anything anymore. Like I even watch my language, when we might say, I believe da 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 da. Like I try not to say that, because no, I don't. I understand concepts, and then I understand more concepts, and then I understand other concepts. But if I believe one thing, then learn something new and attach to that belief, it's just another belief. And I read a book the other day that said, adopting a belief is the killer of your intelligence, because then you stop asking questions. You stop staying curious to what else is possible. So just be really careful and understand that our beliefs are simply things that we've adopted, we've agreed to because our parents or whoever, we saw something, we're like, okay, that must be true. And we have it, our partner has it. So bringing them to the table, talking about like, what do you believe about money? What are your experiences? And opening up some space to just be like, so these things are not necessarily true. They're just where each of us are coming from. And how can we question them? How can you explain to me, like talk me through where that came from, why you feel that way, talk me through where you think that the first time you actually like adopted that as a belief system. And that way you can get an understanding of each other and where each other are coming from. Now, as I said a few moments ago, like we can't force our partners to do this work. So if your partner is not willing, that's okay. Just you do your own work. Like you can still create a super healthy, amazing relationship with money, even if your partner is unwilling to. And I'm sure we've all experienced that when we change, the world around us starts to shift as well. So if one person has a really healthy relationship with money in a couple, I'm sure overall the situation will be healthier financially.
Money mindset is a massive thing. So did you want to add to that, or do you want us to move on to the next couple of questions that have come up? Have you got anything burning that you want to say around the money mindset?
Oh, just with managing money in a relationship, I see a lot of, and I see this in my friends as well, especially then when you have babies and life gets hectic, especially if you're still trying to run businesses, and holy moly, like I let my own go in that, first year or so of having 2 babies. I was like, everything went really. And I think that it's easy for some people to give those, even if they have been quite financially in control before, to pass that over. And in a relationship, it's okay if like one person is better at the social organizing or financial organizing or management or whatever. But it's not okay to not have anything to do with any of these parts. And I think that when I talk to a lot of women around, I'm like, get that power back. You actually have really great ideas. I think actually better than your partner. And so even if you can't totally, change beliefs, you can still loosen them sometimes by sharing perspectives, or you can definitely demand access and knowledge of all, what things are going, what's happening, and passwords and all of that kind of thing. At the bare minimum, absolutely, like legally you are responsible for that being in a relationship. And so you need to be onto that. And if that is not easy for you, that is actually verging on financial abuse, which is way more common than, and it's another thing that we really need to talk about with our girlfriends and stuff, like, what's going on, how, like, you don't have to say how much money is in the bank at the moment, but you can get a sense of, if people know or not. And I think by starting these conversations, it's incredibly important. It might just give one person the outlet to be like, I'm not in control of that. And then you can help them, But I think that it's this financial abuse and sort of a crackdown of a power structure is very, very common. And so if you feel like you've lost a bit of money control, just quietly and gently get your information back, start to, just slowly start conversations slowly and softly until you feel like you're in a little bit more aware place, and then you can make some decisions from there.
Yeah, huge points that you've raised there, and I think really important to talk about, because even when it comes to superannuation, for women who have gone off and had children and stopped working for a long period of time, obviously their super fund is going to look a lot smaller than what their partners does, who has continued to work. And then there's this huge spike of women in their 50s who are living in poverty because they've split from their partners down the track and haven't managed their superannuation, have nothing to live on and can't get a job at this later stage. So it's a huge conversation to have around that. And I think getting that power back gently, like you said, and slowly and gradually is so important for all of us to start thinking about if we haven't already.
I'm Maritza Barone. Thank you for listening to the Things You Can't Unhear podcast. I'd love to keep the conversation going. Let us know what you thought of this episode, and if something really profound came up for you that you want to share, let's talk about it. You can find me on Instagram at Things You Can't Unhear, or on my personal page at Maritza_Barone. And if someone you know will benefit from something that was said in this show, make sure you share it with them too. If you haven't already, hit the subscribe button and keep up to date with what's next. And if you can spare a few seconds, please rate and review the show on iTunes, just so other people can find us more easily and quickly. And as always, my friends, be happy, be healthy, be conscious, and be kind.